April 26th, 2010 was the worst day of my life. Not knowing where you are or who took you is my worst nightmare. But if you can see this, I love you, and we all miss you.
If you release them now, this will be over. I won't chase after you or come after you. But if you don't, I will find them, and I will do whatever it takes, and I will end you.
Behind every missing person is a family, searching for answers and holding on to hope. Let's keep their memory alive and work together on bringing them home, because no one should ever be forgotten. In today's case, we are going to talk about Alexandria Lewitzer. So stay tuned and let's dive in. So today's story is about Alexandria Lewitzer. She went by Allie, and she was born February 3rd, 1994. Her parents is Joanne and John. Allie was very passionate about reading, and she loved art. She also loved to do sports, and she was really competitive. She was a very sweet girl, and her parents were going through a divorce. And during this time of the divorce, it hit Allie pretty hard. You see, she had issues adjusting to distance between her and her dad. She lived with her mom, and she had a great relationship with her mom, but she wanted to build a close relationship with her dad as well. And it's really hard to do that when dad's not in the same household. So they were working on that. During her time in high school, she joined a band, and she was great at the band. However, she wanted to join a choir and get into singing, musicals, all that type of stuff, and she really liked it. She did talent show. She did very, very well on the talent show. So during her sophomore year at Spring High, everything seemed to be going great. She had lots of friends, she had a boyfriend, and like every other teen, she had her phone, so she would be on her phone. She was a very, very responsible individual. So much so that she started working, and you can only imagine the amount of excitement that she had. Because now, with her being independent, she was able to make her own money to buy her own things. So the business that she decided to work at is called the Burger Barn. Allie was known to be a go-getter. During the time of her working at the Burger Barn was around the second semester into her sophomore year. And on April 26th, on a Monday, she would wake up to get ready for school. But like most teens, I know, especially myself when I was a teenager in high school, after you're coming out of the weekends, that first Monday is very, very hard to, even now with work, it's really hard to kind of get up and get out of bed to do your thing, to get ready and be on time. So she got up a little bit later than usual. She, showered, got dressed, put her makeup on, and then she got on the bus at 7:30. So at this time, Allie would have been working at the Burger Barn for 2 weeks. And she was super excited because today was the day that she was going to go and pick up her check. So much so that she actually texted her mom and asked, as soon as she gets out of school and the bus drops her off by her house, if she can walk to her job and pick up her check. And then also potentially work a shift. Her mom said no. Her mom was always known to go and drive her to work. She didn't really want her walking. That was up until this day. So at first, her mom's answer was no. But Allie kept asking and asking. And shortly after, her mom agreed and said, okay, that will be fine. So around 2:25, Allie gets on a bus, and during her ride, she texts her mom to let her know that she forgot her keys at the house. Her mom then calls her brother, who's at the house already, who was planning on leaving to go with friends, to leave the door open when he leaves. That ways, in case Allie isn't able to pick up that shift that she wanted to, when she goes home, she won't be locked out. She can go inside her house safely. However, unfortunately, this will be the last text that Joanne gets from her daughter, Allie. So around 5:30 p.m., Joanne gets off of work and she comes home to an empty house. However, Joanne's not yet alarmed. And the reason being is because she knew that Allie was supposed to pick up a shift. So these didn't raise any flags yet. And she assumed that the reason why she didn't text Joanne was because maybe she got busy at work, she was able to pick up that shift, and maybe potentially she left her phone in a locker, or she couldn't have her phone on herself or on her person. So time passes, and it's now 7 p.m. And Joanne starts to grow worrisome. So she takes it upon herself to try to reach out to Allie, but Allie doesn't pick up. This makes Joanne grow more anxious and worried. So between 8:30 and 8:45-ish, Joanne drives to Allie's job. But when she drives there, she sees that the store is closed. And what's worse is that the lights inside the restaurant are off. This is a huge red flag for her. So much so that she calls John, freaking out because she's worried and she doesn't know where Allie is. As she's frustrated, trying to figure things out, she's on the phone with John. They decide to reach out to Allie's friends. They call all of Allie's friends to see if she's potentially over there. But the thing that is a red flag is that, like we stated earlier, Allie was a very responsible young lady. It wasn't a common thing for Allie to go out of her way to go and stay at a friend's house also. She was known to be more or less of a homebody. And instead of her going out to her friends' houses, she would invite them to her house. So after Joanne calls all of Allie's friends, she stops at Allie's boyfriend's house, knocks on the door, and Allie's boyfriend's parents answer. The boyfriend comes there too, and they all look confused because they're not expecting Allie's mom at their doorstep. She asks if they were there, if Allie was there, and they say no. This makes Joanne even more worried. So Joanne goes back home, and her brother Mason arrives only for the fact of knowing that his sister is missing. This prompts him to go and call his friends to see if they could help. Joanne asks the neighbors if they're willing to help. John gets off of work, he goes and he helps, and they conduct a search party to find Allie. So at some point they contact Harris County Sheriff's Department. And I don't know if you guys know this, but usually it's a 24 to 48 hour window before they conduct a missing person case and take the case serious. It drives me insane because I feel like if there's a missing person case, time is of the essence, and it is very important to jump on that case, use every tool that they can to try to find her and locate her. However, they didn't treat the case like a missing person case. When deputies came there, they went and they basically told the parents that she probably just ran away, and she probably just ran away to blow off steam or something like that because maybe she had a disagreement or she didn't like something that the parents did. This would only create more frustration within this timeline. So the parents take it upon themselves to keep searching for her. John will make it a point to contact the bus company that picked up Allie from school. And he wanted to obtain the footage to see, if so, did she go on the bus? And he was able to. He was able to obtain the footage to see that she got on the bus, and that there were also two other boys that got off of the bus with her. On April 26th, sheriff deputies arrive at the Lewitzer's family residence, and they look in her room, see if anything's out of the ordinary. The thing that bothers me is the lack of competence that the sheriffs had, because If so, and if it were a runaway case, they found money, they found her makeup, they found all of her precious belongings in her room. And if so, if this were a runaway case, don't you think that Allie would have taken her money? Because she would have to pay for wherever it is that she's going, right? However, they didn't. They still ruled it as if it's just a runaway. At this point, you can only imagine how much time is being wasted. So the next morning, the parents contact the sheriff's department, but only to get even more infuriated and frustrated because the sheriffs, they didn't seem very concerned about the case. They still treated it as if it was a runaway case. So John and the mom took it upon themselves to gather more intel. So they got the intel and the footage from the bus company, but John took it a step further and went to the burger barn where Allie worked. And he went inside, talked to the manager and to the co-workers to see if Allie had made an appearance there at work yesterday. To see if Allie made an appearance there to pick up her check at all. And they said no, they didn't see her. So John went across the street. There was a gas station. And John went there to see if they can look through the footage and find at any point his daughter passing around that area. However, they weren't able to find anything either. So at this time, with all the intel that John has gathered, he knows that Allie made it on the bus and got off of the bus. However, around the time frame of her going to the burger barn, something happened. And this window was a very small window. And the reason being is because Allie's job was only a couple of blocks away from their residence. John and Joanne had the idea to contact their cell phone provider, AT&T. They had this special plan where they could try to ping the phone, the family plan, and they pinged it. And it was only on one cell phone tower that was relatively close to the location of their subdivision. And they were also able to see the last text that was made. And that last text was made from Allie's phone to her boyfriend Jay. She texted him and she asked if they could hang right after she gets off of work. However, Jay had other plans, so they actually never met up. Joanne does note that there were one or two deputies that, although they didn't treat the case as if it was a missing person case, those two deputies made it a point to treat the case and do investigations as if it was a missing person case. Hopefully that makes sense. The deputies that help assist with the missing person case took it upon themselves to locate the two boys that got off of the bus when Allie got off. They questioned them, and they also went to the burger barn to question the employees to see if there was anything that was out of the ordinary that would raise any flags of suspicion. However, nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary, and everyone had their due alibis, so nothing came out of that investigation. During some point in time, Joanne's frustration grew and grew, as any parent's frustration would. She ended up finding out about a group called Laura's Recovery Center, and she looked into them, she talked to them, and she actually has said a lot of positive things about the group. And the Laura Recovery Center actually seemed to be an advocate for being a mediator, I guess, for Joanne's family and the sheriff's department, in hopes that they would take the case a lot more serious. You can only imagine with the nonprofit organization and what they've been known to do and help and educate others on missing person cases. They had a really good reputation, and the sheriff's department, basically they didn't want to get any bad press. So I think by this point they tried to do the footwork that they could. However, time was wasted, a lot of time. Later, Joanne would hire a private investigator, a PI. And this PI was quite expensive. She came out of pocket for him to do his work, only to come up short. He had nothing. No leads, nothing that could help the case. However, there were two other PIs that actually helped. And these two PIs didn't only help, They did it for free. You can only imagine how much of a godsend that must have felt like for her. And these PIs did their work. One of the PIs came up with a case of what could have happened. One PI believed that the missing person case could have been linked to none other than Brandon Laverne. He pled guilty for killing Mickey Shunick. And the reason why this could have been a possibility was when he was convicted. Around that time, Brandon Laverne had a white truck. And there was a lead saying that he was caught talking to a younger girl who we know to be Mickey Shunick. And when he abducted Mickey Shunick, that was at the gas station that was fairly close to Allie's work. So Brandon Laverne had contacts around that area and family. So they didn't find it too far-fetched that he could have been linked to Allie's case. However, during more and more research and investigators jumping on board to work with the thought process of what the PI came up with, they said that Brandon Laverne had a solid alibi and he was nowhere near the vicinity during that time. So the second PI, her name is Amber. I'm not going to say her last name because she doesn't want to be in that field anymore. However, she went above and beyond to try to help Joanne out for free with anything that she could. She even went as far as trying to work with homicide detectives. So much so that they actually ended up getting a lead through an individual. However, the lead said that she seen a lady that looked exactly like Allie, but it ended up being a lookalike, unfortunately. And that person that was a lookalike was sex trafficked in a brothel house. So you can only imagine that, yeah, at one side of the coin, you have the excitement of knowing that your child is still out there and alive. But on the other side, you know all the traumas that they could have potentially went through. So it's a bittersweet. I would like to bring up a very important fact that Houston, Texas is ranked number 2 for sex traffickers. I would like to bring up a very important fact that as of right now, Houston, Texas is ranked number 2 for sex trafficking. And because it's known to be like an international area, you got a lot of travelers out of there. So you can only imagine the possibility of this becoming a potential. Joanne took it upon herself to be an advocate for missing person cases and to try to help educate others. She also has a Facebook page that is called Hope for Allie. If anyone has any information out there, any tips that could potentially help this case, please take it upon yourself to reach out to that Facebook page, Hope for Allie. This is a very unfortunate story, and everyone that has loved ones, I believe this could be like one of the worst things to experience. I couldn't even fathom. Please, let's all do the family a favor by keeping Allie's memory alive and doing anything that we can. And if we stumble upon any tips to help support her and her family and help them out where we can. I'm Austin Rhodes, and this is Dark Case Files.
Brighten my days, now the air feels heavy. Whispers in the night, footsteps vanished, shadows swallowed her light.